Spooky season is finally upon us, and for the past 2 years, I have been making Coraline dolls. This was the first one I made. It's of myself, and then the next year I made Coraline. I have videos for both of these if you're interested in seeing those. This one probably has the most in-depth tutorial, but yeah, I really enjoy making these and want to make another one for this year. I have a couple characters in mind for this, but I think I'm going to start off with Wednesday Addams. I think her style and Coraline would be a really fun mashup. But with all that said, I'm gonna go ahead and get started making this doll. The first step is to make a wire armature for the doll, which is essentially a metal skeleton that will give us something to build the rest of the doll off of. And the paper template I'm using as a guide for my wire I've made available as a link in the description below. Here I'm rolling up some tinfoil into a ball to help fill some of the space for the head, that way we don't have to use a ton of clay when sculpting the face. I use polymer clay for this. It is an oven-baked clay, and I just wrap it around the tinfoil, working on defining the shape of the head, and once it's smoothed out and looking the way I want it to, I'll then go ahead and add the features. I like to press in the buttons that I'm going to use for the eyes as a way for me to kind of mark out where I want all those features to lay. After the clay is done in the oven, I like to sand it a little bit just to smooth out any imperfections. To make the body of the doll, I just take my template and then trace around it and make sure when I'm cutting it out to leave plenty of space for the seam allowance. Cutting close to the stitching on any corners or rounded areas of the pattern will help make it look nice when you flip it right side out. The next step is to add stuffing. I like to stuff the arms and legs before adding the armature, that way I don't have to work around the wire. With the body attached, I can then start painting the doll. I use acrylic paint for this, but any part of the doll that is fabric that I'm painting, I be sure to add some fabric medium to the paint. For the dress pattern, I took my template and drew a dress shape around it. I made the front piece wider to accommodate for her buttons, and I'll show how I did that in just a bit. I'm basing my doll off of Christina Ricci's Wednesday, particularly this dress that she wears that has tiny flowers all over it. I didn't have a fabric similar to it, so I decided to paint them on by hand. I made that front part of the dress wider so that I could then fold over the excess fabric and sew it down to make what looks like a panel for the buttons. Then I sewed the front and back pieces together and hemmed everything. Her buttons are just made out of craft foam, which I then glued down and painted black. Her last but probably most iconic detail of her dress, her white collar, I made a paper towel pattern first, and once I was happy with how it looked, I then sewed it out of fabric and just hot glued it around her neck. She's almost done, she just needs some hair and eyes. Her hair is just some black yarn, and then I used some rubber cement to glue it to the top of her head. I like to add some black thread to the buttons just to make it look like they're sewn on, even though I just glue them down with E6000. But with her eyes on, she is finished and ready for her reveal. Here is the finished doll, tiny little Wednesday Addams. I think my favorite parts are her dress and all the little details on it, like the tiny flowers and the collar and the little buttons. So cute. It's really cool seeing her with the past year's dolls as well. I definitely want to keep making a doll every year as a spooky time tradition. I have a bunch of characters in mind still. Here's a few of them. But also, if you have any ideas for characters that might be cool as a doll as well, let me know in the comments. And yeah, that is pretty much it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!